The wind howled as the small boat pulled up to the rocky shore, spraying Emily's boots with cold seawater. She squinted up at the towering lighthouse, its weathered stone walls standing as a sentinel against the endless expanse of the Atlantic Ocean. It was both intimidating and strangely beautiful, a stark figure against the stormy sky. Emily had been sent here for one purpose: to fix it. The lighthouse's navigation systems had failed, leaving the nearby shipping lanes in peril. It was her job to bring them back online. She welcomed the isolation. She'd always found machines easier to deal with than people. Machines didn't judge or disappoint. But this time, she wasn't alone. Sophie hopped off the boat behind her, pulling her scarf tighter around her neck to block the wind. She didn't look like someone who belonged on an island like this. Her auburn hair gleamed even under the gray sky, and there was an infectious energy about her, a warmth that felt almost out of place against the stark silhouette of the lighthouse. "You must be Emily," Sophie said, extending her hand. Her voice was cheerful, her smile disarming. Emily shook her hand briefly. "You're the historian." "That's right. Sophie Parker. I'll be working in the archives while you do whatever it is you do." Emily didn't bother explaining the intricacies of electrical systems. Instead, she turned toward the lighthouse, eager to get started. The first few days passed uneventfully. Emily immersed herself in her repairs, focusing on generators, wiring, and relays. Sophie spent hours in the dimly lit archive room at the base of the lighthouse, poring over dusty journals and maps. Their interactions were minimal, just polite nods and occasional small talk about supplies or the weather. But even then, Emily found herself stealing glances at Sophie, drawn to her radiant smile and the spark in her eyes when she talked about her discoveries. The storm hit suddenly, sweeping across the island with relentless force. By nightfall, the lighthouse trembled under the fury of the wind. Emily had just finished inspecting the generator when the lights flickered and went out, plunging the tower into darkness. "Damn it," she muttered, grabbing her flashlight. She was about to head back to the generator room when Sophie appeared, clutching an oil lamp. "Emily," she said, her voice low and urgent. "Did you hear that?" "Hear what?" "Footsteps," Sophie whispered, "on the stairs." Emily frowned. "It's probably the wind." But Sophie didn't look convinced. Together, they climbed the spiral staircase, their footsteps echoing eerily in the stillness. But when they reached the top, there was nothing there, just the empty lantern room and the faint howl of the storm outside. That night, as they sat together in the common room, Sophie pulled out one of the journals she'd found. "Look at this," she said, sliding it across the table. Emily skimmed the page. The entries described strange occurrences: footsteps in the night, shadows that moved on their own, whispers carried on the wind. "You think the lighthouse is haunted?" Emily asked, her tone skeptical. Sophie shrugged. "I don't know, but doesn't it feel like something's watching us?" Emily didn't answer. She didn't believe in ghosts, but she couldn't shake the unease that had settled over her. As the days went on, the strange occurrences continued. Shadows flickered at the edges of their vision, and Sophie uncovered more unsettling entries in the journals. Emily tried to focus on her work, but she couldn't ignore the growing tension between her and Sophie. Not just the tension caused by the lighthouse's mysteries, but something deeper, more personal. It started with small moments: a brush of hands as Sophie passed her tools, a shared laugh over dinner, the way Sophie's eyes lingered on Emily, when she thought she wasn't looking. Emily felt it too, a magnetic pull she couldn't explain. But she kept her distance. Letting people in wasn't something she was good at. It had only ever led to pain. One evening, as they sat on the balcony watching the storm, Sophie broke the silence. "You know, you don't have to do it all alone," she said softly. Emily glanced at her. "What are you talking about?" "I mean you," Sophie said. "You act like the weight of the world is on your shoulders, but you don't have to carry it alone." Emily didn't know how to respond. Sophie's words hit a nerve, but they also made her feel seen in a way she wasn't used to. Before she could stop herself, she leaned in and kissed Sophie. At first, it was tentative, a question rather than a statement. But when Sophie kissed her back, pulling her closer, the world seemed to fade away. The storm, the lighthouse, the mysteries, they all disappeared, leaving only the heat of Sophie's touch and the rapid beat of Emily's heart. The next morning, the tension between them had shifted. It was warmer now, more intimate. But the lighthouse wasn't done with them yet. Sophie found an old journal at the base of the spiral staircase. It was different from the others. Its pages were worn and fragmented, the entries hurried and almost frantic. The last page contained a single phrase: "Break the cycle." "What do you think it means?" Sophie asked, showing Emily the journal. "I don't know," Emily said, but the words sent a shiver down her spine. That night, the storm intensified. The generator failed again, and they were forced to climb the tower in darkness to manually activate the light. As they worked, the footsteps returned, louder this time, echoing up the staircase. "Emily," Sophie's voice trembled. "It's just the wind," Emily said, though she didn't believe her own words. But when they reached the lantern room, they found something that made their blood run cold. The words, "Set me free," were etched across the glass in what looked like frost. By now, they knew the lighthouse was more than just an old building. It was a place trapped in its own history, its secrets woven into its very walls. The journals spoke of a keeper who had vanished during a storm, his last words hinting at a curse. "We have to finish what he started," Sophie said. Together, they pieced together the clues. The light at the top of the tower wasn't just a beacon for ships. It was a symbol, a way to break the cycle of despair and isolation that had haunted the lighthouse for decades. As the storm reached its peak, Emily and Sophie climbed to the top of the tower. The wind tore at their clothes, and the crashing waves roared like thunder. But they stood side by side and manually activated the light. The moment the light pierced through the storm, the oppressive weight that had hung over the lighthouse lifted, replaced by an almost tangible sense of peace. When the storm finally passed, Emily and Sophie sat together on the balcony, watching the first rays of sunlight break through the clouds. "Do you think it's over?" Sophie asked. Emily nodded, her hand finding Sophie's. "I think so. But whatever comes next, we'll face it together." The lighthouse had finally found its peace, and so had they. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel for more captivating tales. Your support means the world.